All right, thank you. Thank you for letting me join with you and talk about principal forums. As David said, it's been some really interesting work, and for me as a former CEO and founder of a company, taking an idea that was so powerful and personally helpful in that stressful world and collaborating with leaders, school leaders in creating a different version of that and then seeing how that helps is really what this afternoon's about that way. So the first thing I wanted to pose to you is this question, which is, what of these three apparently quite disparate roles of company founder or CEO and of school principal, what is it they have in common? Most people would argue that they're very, very different roles. And indeed, sitting among principals, many principals shy away from even being associated with the entrepreneurs or the CEOs. But they have a lot in common. And as the world gets more difficult, and as Philip Riley's principal surveys show more and more stress, more and more difficulty, the need to respect and understand the potential for convergence around how we support these leaders becomes more apparent. Of course, as you can see, the first of the three bits of answer I want to quickly go through is to do with the complexity of the organisations that they run. Schools are ridiculously complex management situations to be in. So if your job feels tough right now, if it feels impossible, there's a very good reason for that. And if you're here and doing quite well with what you're doing, then you should be so proud. It's a ridiculous challenge. You know, you guys are at the top of the leadership difficulty tree, in my opinion. The other thing these three groups have in common is this. They need a safe place to be able to unpack, we call it the 5%ers, the absolute best things that it could happen, because in processing all that awesomeness you can grow. And this might be more familiar to us in Australian culture, the bottom 5%. You know, in leadership theory, we go on about how a leader must demonstrate control and order and, you know, if things aren't doing well, the duck, right? You've got to pretend it's calm on top while you're frantic underneath. A leader needs a place where they don't have to be the duck, okay? They're going to burn out. Their legs moving fast. We're principals, we need our own learning pit, a place where we can struggle, not have to kind of hide the struggle for a professional and appropriate reasons, simply be there in that space. When we think about what to do about that, obviously you've got personal advisors, paid or unpaid, and they're fantastic, but one of the limitations can be they may not understand the nuances, the full context of what you're disclosing to them when you're seeking advice. They might have their own bias. Goodness knows I do. I come from a place of learning and I assume and I fill in the gaps of what I've been told with what I know. As a principal, you could have a coach. Fantastic idea, safe place to struggle. But coaching in its own right, the coach's job is to ask really good questions that get you to reflect, to get you to organise your thinking, to get you to move forward with a solution. And that may or may not give you that sense of other perspective, of other people on that same journey. So you may or may not get that there. You could talk to your friends and your peers, of course, and of course we do. But sometimes you need frank and fearless feedback, and let's be honest, that's not always given to you by your friends or your peers. Many a principal that ends up in a difficult space looks back and is frustrated that people didn't reflect back to them as they fell apart, as they burnt out. You know, their friends didn't tap them on the shoulder. You know, people who knew, who could see it coming, didn't tell them. So we can't always rely on that to solve our problem. And courses and programs, of course you must be doing those and be doing, I guess, lots of them as there's more and more to learn as things change so quickly. But courses alone don't necessarily give you the implementation detail, do they? And sometimes relying on courses creates what we would call an execution gap. A little sort of piece of space that I don't necessarily know how I can just jump in and do that. We know that principals want more face time with each other. But what we really want is to network, communicate with one another, and what we really want, 99%, is to collaborate, to work together on things. That's what we really want. When we think about collaboration, we start to get into the territory of today. We think about how we can share experiences. How do we take our personal journey, the knowledge that we know and the advice we've had, and how we then pull that into a collective conversation together, so that people can learn from each other's experiences rather than people's knowledge. They're meetings. But they're exceptionally useful meetings. They're sacred meetings. They're places where you'll sacrifice a great deal to make sure you get to that one. They're places where you get to be in the learning pit, to deal with your 5%, and you walk out of there different and connected. To be a member of a group that meets like this, though, with that level of vulnerability, psychological safety is critical, isn't it? If you're going to hang it all out there, you're vulnerable. Would we agree? But we also know vulnerability itself creates risk. And in forum, the whole idea is for you to come straight in at that difficult level. So we must have some quite significant and serious safety mechanisms built around these groups if they're to work. The first one, of course, is your constitution or your group rules. It's pretty blunt and clear if you're a member of this group about whether the way the meeting's progressing, the forum experience is going, whether it's on or off track. And that dig deep, you get out of it what you put into it. That's kind of stinging if you're only, not really putting in a lot of effort. The limits of confidentiality, that's critical. Now, up front, Chatham House rules apply. What's said in the room stays in the room. And we have to be really clear about the limits of confidentiality and really clear about all the, oh, really? You mean I can't talk to my wife about that? Yeah, no, well, if you want to, don't join our forum. Yeah, no, you can't. This is a safe place. Make no mistake, this is a safe place. Let's keep moving. Attendance and exclusion. People are committing time to this, your fellow leaders. If you skip one for a less than appropriate reason, be prepared to get kicked out. People have to prepare for this, and you'll see this in just a tick. People put tremendous effort into these processes and get tremendous amount out. So they can't suffer people not seeing it as one of the top priorities. Advice versus experience. You want to give advice, go and have a coffee with them after forum. Don't do it in the meeting. We can all pay people or ask people for free and get them to tell us stuff. That's not what forum's about. Forum's about people honestly saying, I can't walk in your shoes, or I had something that sounds so similar, and in my case, this is what happened. Most people censure their experience and pepper it with what they think they should say. The discipline of being amongst people who are committed to not doing that, who are committed to just being blunt and brutally honest about their lived experience of whatever the issues are, is priceless. Conflicts of interest, the last one. This is a nightmare. In education, you're all hanging out from the same industry, in the same region, and potentially competing for the same jobs. So again, just have a look at how this was solved at that local level. You're also going to hear all this super sensitive stuff. What happens if there's a mandatory notification context of it? It's all very well for Chatham House rules, but the law is the law. So, won't go on any further. Just want you to reflect on, these are all solvable problems, but they're worth solving at the outset so that we can really be clear about what we can put out there. The other part of psychological safety, of course, is in the meeting itself. So these are the kind of the code for us all to go on this journey together. When we are in the meeting, of course, we have a chair of a meeting and a moderator of a meeting. And I won't spend long here. The chair, of course, is what you would think they are. They run the meeting. Just the moderator. That's a role not necessarily people know about. They manage the dynamics and the behaviour of the room. They use red and yellow cards to navigate traffic, and they observe and give feedback about our group process. But they're very important in forum meetings to probe silent participants, to make sure everybody's giving what they need to red card advice. So the first part of the agenda, let's just get into that. We've got our chair and moderator, our psychological safety, that's all under control. Everybody got the game, and we do it every time, by the way. 10 years later, it still is the same. We do our icebreakers, but typically in forums, they're level 2 and 3. They're quite difficult. And we do our one-word barometer. One-word barometer is really easy. It's my mood right now. It might be stressed, tired, angry, whatever it is. But it's one word. It's powerful because I own wherever I'm at, which immediately allows me to correct to wherever I think I should be. And it's powerful for the rest of the group because they all get a context for me. The next bit, this is where it starts to get interesting, people. The next bit is where we do leadership updates. And what you have to do before you go to forum, of course, is fill out your little one-page update tool, Some people, like me, if we're a bit disorganised, sitting in the car park, writing it all out. Some people do it ahead of time. It's beautifully typed. But you have to have your update tool finished, because the first thing we do is head round and get people to share, and you'll see I've highlighted it, the best and worst. Forces them to write things down, therefore think in a way a lot of us don't normally think. For many of us, myself included, I had a chat to a couple of people, filling that tool. Some people, when we started the forums in Central Queensland, they said, well, actually right now, it's the pre-forum prep that I'm finding most helpful. The fact that I've got to take time to think like that, it's not how I normally think. Remember, pulling that apart emotionally is critical for growth, with entrepreneurs, CEOs, principals. We have to pull apart some of the experiences so we can understand ourselves and change ourselves. So that's that check-in process. Once that check-in is done, we do a thing called hot issues. And hot issues is kind of cool, because having done the check-in, people write up the things that they think they'd like to chat about at forum, that they'd like some brainstorming time on. And people write up what they want, and then we Vegas vote them, i.e. we tick the ones that selfishly we're most interested in. From there, we can then circle the ones that get the most votes and thrash that out in a structured way. This is fantastic because it requires no preparation, it's down and dirty, and sometimes what you think would be a good hot issue, after the updates are done, you've changed your mind and you've got a new idea. So having these reactive times in forums is essential. Once hot issues is over, you'll see we actually have a tech break. Then they come back, we do a TED Talk, or it's called PD Quick Share on your agendas that you've got. Why do we do that? Why would you waste time watching a TED Talk or something else for 7 minutes and then have an 8-minute discussion? Goodness me. Oh. Because you need to do your learning together in a forum. You need to have group experiences over something. And you don't have time to sit there and read a journal article or anything else in forum itself. Again, there's plenty of other meetings or structures for that to happen. So that's why we do that. We need to have done something or seen something together every time we meet. It's an important part of the group psychology of leadership forums. This is the main thing to slow down on. 45 minutes of your 2.5-hour forum agenda is invested here. The single biggest investment is in the PD intensive. And there are 3 options in a forum. You can do a peer mentoring process, like the council, that allow you to grow and have insight through the listening. You can do deep dive presentations. You'll notice those looking at that form, it asks you, well, what's the strategic question related to the issue you're bringing forward? Play around with that later. Most people get stumped turning whatever it is they're presenting into a worthy question of their peers. And there are team growth activities. We talked about how you might do a TED Talk or invest some time collectively just to have an experience of something. But it gets bigger and better if you've got a sanctioned team growth slot in your forum agenda. You plan this stuff ahead. Because you do things like Lifeline, like Letter to Older, Younger Self, the eulogy stuff, really profound and deeply reaching personal exploration. And you're doing it in a safe place, and you're connecting it back up to what does it mean for me as a leader. At the end of it, of course, we do that barometer again. And you'll see in your update tool, you can write it down in that slot. Because we're interested, and we hope you're interested in your own experiences, meta awareness of whether if you came in rushed and you ended up focused, or you came in happy and ended up frustrated. We're interested in you being across you. We also close with a satisfaction score, because forums are truly responsible for their own journey, forum members. That means if they're not having 10 out of 10 experiences, they need to stop and think about that. And they need to have a collective discussion to make next forum better. And of course, you take away actions. We didn't unpack this, but you'll see there's needs and leads and things to do. You can scribble on your update tool. You scribble on a notepad. You can put wherever you like. But we rip around with our members and just give everybody an opportunity to articulate, be accountable to those things. So that's how a forum works. That's what's going on inside it. I hope that starts to give you a sense of it. Everyone should be in a forum. They should all experience the benefit of having that tight-knit people who you can trust them to be frank and fearless, and you can trust them to care for you when you need it most. So thank you so much for letting me share and for all your input in this session. And on that note, I'll hand to you, David. Thank you.